Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Heart to Heart. I'm your host, Emma Buggy, a teacher of compassionate communication and active listening skills. And today is a special extra episode that I'm recording from a beautiful river right next to the town of Anjers in a little village called Épinard in the northwest of France. And today's episode is really a moment of expression towards you, the listeners, where I'm going to be speaking a little bit about honest self-expression. And this comes in between a few other episodes that are continuing alongside on compassionate communication, which is the theme of this show. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about compassionate communication, or you are coming to this podcast for the first time, then I really recommend listening to the past episodes. Or you can have a look at my website at www.empathart.com for more information about compassionate communication and the work that I do with active listening. So, honest self-expression. Yeah. I guess the reason that I chose this topic today is because, well, for those of you that have been listening regularly, you might have noticed that there's a couple of weeks where I haven't made a podcast. And I've been struggling with making a podcast, recording it, and editing it in a way that feels good for me. And the reason that I've been struggling, particularly in the last weeks, is because I'm really going through some extremely tough life changes at the moment. Things that I would love to personally share with you, and at the same time I have this longing for privacy around the details of what's happening in my life. But I will say that these changes are living in me with such intensity that I find the act of recording, editing, and teaching actually quite difficult. I notice so much of my reality, so much of what's really happening keeps coming up in the moment, and I get distracted from my focus. And yet I have such a longing to keep this contact with you and to keep recording, because I'm so inspired by this energy in me, this part of me that so wants to contribute and to share the things that have really taught me so much in my life and helped me grow. And also in the act of sharing and creating the podcast, it nourishes me so much. It's like I learn through my own sharing experience. So, yeah, that's my honesty. That's my honesty around where I'm at. And the reason I share that with you is because it gives me this sense of connection and realness around my life and where I am. I don't want to hide behind some image or label that I create for myself around being professional, around only showing the parts of me that I imagine you want to hear, or that I imagine make me seem what I would label as professional or on top of things. And the reason I don't want to the reason I want to show my honesty and show my vulnerability and share actually the truth of what's happening for me is because I'm human. And I so long to live in a world where being human in all our shapes and colors is not just accepted but celebrated and a part of life in every way. And I just know myself that in other jobs, in other situations, I've held back from sharing my truth, from from really showing what's happening in me because I have a fear that it's not accepted, that I won't be loved, I won't be liked. And that's just not in alignment with my longing for authenticity and for realness. And I know that I get so excited when I see in other people, when someone shares with me the real and absolute depth of what's happening with them, and they open up their hearts. It's like, oh my God, thank you. It's like my eyes open up and my ears are suddenly so alert, and I'm excited to just connect with this human being on a level of truth. Yeah. So that's what inspires me to talk about honesty today. And I guess I don't really want to go too much into exercises because if I'm honest, that doesn't feel really connected to what's alive in me right now. There's just this longing to share. And I think what helps me connect with my honesty is when I slow down and notice what's happening in my body, what's happening in my mind, which part of me is leading right now. So when I slow down in this moment, I notice that there is a tiny bit of tension in my stomach, and my heart is beating a little bit faster than it usually does. And I also notice that my posture is like my body is leaning forward. Yeah, I realize that this leaning forward is like an act of, or an action, a movement of urgency maybe. And I notice as I lean backwards now, which feels more in tune with what my body wants to do. There's just such a longing to relax into being, relax into sharing. Not to have some expectation of myself to say something interesting or to say something that is really valued by the exterior. Yeah, and then now I notice the thought comes to my mind of, but this is a podcast, people can't see you, and if you relax too much and spend too much time in the quiet, then people will get bored and they'll turn off and they won't listen. And then there's another thought that comes, which is, there's a boat going past and it's making noise, and that might be distracting too. And I laugh because I just suddenly noticed another thought that comes up, which is, this is so unprofessional. Are you really going to put this out there? And already, just by sharing that, I feel some relief. Yeah. And I just noticed that this, me connecting with myself in this moment, the reason I'm doing it on a podcast where people will listen to me, I guess is, and now the water lapping up against the river edge. And the sound of the water is just rippling in my ears. Wow, it's so delicious to just slow down. So if I'm honest with myself in this moment, I recognize that I stop myself in the middle of a sentence, but I notice that in this moment all I want to do is just sit back and enjoy the sound of the water and the wind. I have this longing also for connecting, seeing the people who are listening right now and asking them, how is this for you to listen to? What does this bring up in you? Do you have judgments that you'd like to share with me? Do you have any needs that are being met right now as you listen to me sharing my honesty? Or just expressing myself in the moment? Does that do anything for you? Yeah, and I kind of have this trust in... I just have this sense of trust coming up in me that I believe that this will meet people in whatever place it's meant to meet them. Like if it's meant to trigger you, then great. There'll be something beautiful in that trigger for you. And if it's meant to nourish you, then wonderful. There'll be something really beautiful in that moment of nourishment that you'll take away. And so my request to you is that if you would like to share your triggers with me, or your moments of feeling nourished, or any learnings that you take from listening to this impromptu moment of self-expression, then I would really love to hear them. I invite you to write a comment in one of the in the podcast notes. You can share comments on the podcast via Podbean, or if you found this link via YouTube or Facebook, then please do leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So as I said, I'm going to leave without any exercise this week. And actually, as I say that, I notice that I'd love to just invite you to slow down and notice your body, notice what's happening for you. Notice your thoughts and see if you can experiment with that in your expression with people around you. See what happens and, how does it land in the other person as you express what's happening for you. And again, there's an invitation to share your experiences with that too. So thank you so much for listening today. I'm really feeling vulnerable and nervous in this moment, and excited to be sharing this unedited moment of self-expression via my podcast today. And I'm really looking forward to the next time that I will share with you, which the next one will hopefully be a continuation of looking at compassion and empathy in the way that we listen to one another, continuing with the series on empathic listening with Christina White. And if that is not the episode, then I imagine the next one will be another moment of expression from me. So stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for listening again.